All right, let's see. How do I do this? Okay, close that window. Great. Okay. How y'all doing? I tried to make that work. Sorry for that issue with the audio issues and all that stuff. I tried to make it work that I was going to be able to do that, and didn't work. And why can't I hear myself? Hello? Great. All right. Fantastic. So yeah, I tried to do it so that I'd capture his window, and I couldn't capture it with the audio, and I'm not sure why, and I'm sorry about all that. So couldn't make it work. Couldn't make it work. So it's just me. It's just me. Yeah. How you all doing? I appreciate your patience through everything. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate your tolerance as I try to work through issues and all the rest of it. So Lord have mercy. We are here with our continuing coverage of the Alex Murdaugh trial. For those of you who are still here and haven't completely bailed out at this point, we're here with our continuing coverage of the Alex Murdaugh trial, where we're hearing from this firearms tool mark examiner. And I'm very interested to hear what he has to say, and also very interested in the cross-examination of him, because I am dubious on the premise that we seem to be working from. So the premise that we seem to be working from, and I suppose we'll hear more about this as we press on, but the premise that we're trying to do is we recovered shells and casings at the murder. We recovered shells and casings at their own private shooting range. And we're able, as tool mark examiners, using the marks for example, from the ejector and the firing pin, for example, we're able to match this to a particular firearm. That last part is where I'm having trouble, right? To a particular firearm I'm having trouble with. If you told me that you could get down to similar, or what would be the phrase? If you could told me you got down to compatible, if you told me you got down to consistent was the word I was looking for. If you told me you got down to consistent versus inconsistent, I could believe it. And then I'd be like, okay, well, what do we mean by consistent? But I could see it being excluded, and I could see it being like included. So if you told me consistent, even to a particular fire manufacturer, I could believe that. If you tell me I can get down to the particular firearm, I'm having a lot of trouble with that premise. Unless there's something special about this particular firearm, it has some sort of defect or something that would leave some sort of unique marking. Unless you have something like that, I have trouble with the premise that I can compare two casings and get down to the particular firearm. This I have problems with. Assuming I get past that issue, then the next issue is, can I date the recovered casings to a particular time? Because we know that firearms that were used at the shooting range were also used on Murdaugh's property, right? So you would expect to find casings consistent or even identical in these two places, right? So if you tell me I found shell casings or rifle casings that are consistent or even identical in these two places, they must have come from the same firearm, then that's one proposition. The next proposition is that I can date the shell casings or rifle casings that I found near the scene of the murder to the time of the murder is a whole nother proposition, right? Because, well, if, he's using his own personal firearms on the property, right, and we found casings, then that would be fine. That they're found near the murder scene is something, but unless you can date them to the time of the murder, which maybe you can do, I'm not sure how that would be done, but I guess, unless you can do that, then you have a real problem. So I am dubious on this forensic examination. I am dubious that, one, it is possible to get down to the unique firearm. And two, even assuming I can do that, I am dubious that I can date the shells and casings that were found near the scene of the murder to the time of the murder. So I am dubious in these two propositions, but I am open-minded. And I am willing to listen and learn, as I hope we all are, right? I hope we all are. And then the defense, of course, will bring in their own expert, presumably, who will be able to testify to some of these things, who then might be in a position to offer some further commentary on these twin issues. But I'm open to the prospect, but I'm coming in skeptical, is what I would say about. So who will try to convince us of these propositions, and then we'll hear some cross-examination relating to these propositions, and we'll try to assess. And then you point out that it's possible that Paul had the gun with him and then the killer used it, but that seems a little bit more implausible. Because presumably the killers would have their own guns with them. So while that is a possible contention, that seems a little overly speculative. So, I mean, we'll see how it goes, but I'm dubious on some of this stuff.
Thank you, Your Honor. May it please the court.
Yes, sir.
Beginning with items, State's Exhibits 111, 112, 113, I believe right before we broke, I presented to counsel and was going to offer it to the witness, and I believe it was, without objection, going to be offered into evidence.
Correct. Without objection. Admitted without objection.
All right, Agent, or Mr. Greer, please review what's been marked as State's Exhibits.
You are welcome, John. I don't know, but you're welcome. I've had a beer. I may have another at some point, but we'll see how it goes.
Sled items 66, 69, and 104. If you would, please let us know if you had an opportunity to inspect those items and analyze them.
Yes, sir, I did. State's Exhibit 112 is sled item 66, and that was determined to be 3 fired bullet jacket fragments and 7 pieces of lead, listed as from Margaret Murdaugh at autopsy. State's Exhibit 11.
111?
Yes, sir, excuse me, I apologize. 111 is sled item 69.
And just as a reminder for those of you who haven't already done so, to please remember to
And that is
retweet
one combination
and
wad
link. It does
listed
help us
as
know quite a lot. Thank you.
from left axilla of Paul Murdaugh at autopsy. In State's Exhibit 113 is sled item 104, and that was 1 birdshot pellet listed as found with Paul Murdaugh's clothing.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Greer, I'm going to direct your attention to State's Exhibit 90, sled item 31.
Am I feeling better? Marginally.
Did you have an opportunity to inspect this item?
I did inspect sled item 31.
Is this the item you inspected?
This firearm is unloaded, safe to handle. Yes, sir, I see my identifying marks as sled item 31 on this firearm.
Tell us what this is.
And that was determined to be 1 Browning Model Auto 5 Light 12 semi-automatic shotgun, 12 gauge, with serial number 03867NV211.
And did you conduct further examinations on that firearm that we'll discuss in a little bit?
Yes, sir, I did.
going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit and entered into evidence. State's Exhibit 89, item 30 on your report.
Oh, did I put on the closed caption? Okay, no.
Did you have an opportunity to inspect that firearm?
This firearm is also unloaded. Yes, sir, I did.
And how do you know that?
When I'm looking at these firearms, we scribe our evidence, if possible, in multiple locations. So I'm looking for those identifying features of that SLED lab number and that item number, as well as my initials on some of these items that I was able to mark that. So I see that on this firearm.
Thank you. And for purposes of our results that we'll discuss shortly, did you conduct additional testing on that firearm?
Yes, sir.
Handing you what's been marked as and entered into evidence as State's Exhibit 91. That would be your SLED item number 32. Tell me if you recognize that firearm, if you, in fact, were the one that received it and conducted examinations on it.
This firearm is also unloaded. I'm going to look again for those identifying marks. Yes, sir. I identify this as my SLED item 32.
Lastly, I'll direct your attention to what's been entered into evidence as State's Exhibit 91, I'm sorry, State's Exhibit 88, and SLED item 33. Are you familiar with that item?
Could you please load the ammo? Could you please load
This
the gun
firearm is also
fired
unloaded.
into the jury to show us how the 300 blackout works?
Yes, sir. I am familiar with this item.
Is that the item that you conducted tests on?
Yes, sir. This is the SLED item 33.
Direct your attention then to State's Exhibit 210, which would be SLED item 34. That's been entered into evidence collectively as State's item 210. Are you familiar with the contents of that evidence package?
To orange.
Yes, sir, I am.
And what are they?
Okay, you will change kitchen.
SLED item
cabinet to
34,
red.
State's Exhibit 210, was determined to be 1 magazine and 26 unfired cellular and billow 300 blackout caliber cartridges.
It was SLED item 34, but this State's Exhibit 210 included with the rifle we just took a look at?
Yes, sir. It was submitted in the same package as the rifle.
Moving on to State's Exhibit 143 State's Exhibit 143, 144, 150, and 148. Entered into evidence already. That would be sled items 166, 167, 168, and 169.
Yes, sir.
And then what's been marked as those exhibits. Would you please take a chance to review those? Let me know if you're familiar with them and if you had an opportunity to analyze them.
Yes, sir. I believe I have seen these items.
Okay. Tell us what they are, if you would.
Each of these 4 items are 12 gauge federal shot shells, and they each all have the markings that are consistent with each other: a federal premium double aught buck 3-inch Magnum.
And do your notes indicate where they were located?
I have an indication based on the packaging.
Okay, what does the packaging indicate?
The packaging for State's Exhibit 150, from what I can tell, says from red bin on workshop bench. For State's Exhibit 144 says from red bin on workshop bench. State's Exhibit 143 says from red bin on workshop bench. And State's Exhibit 148 also says from red bin on workshop bench.
All right, thank you. I'm now going to hand you what's been previously entered into evidence as State's Exhibits 145, 146, 147, and 149. That would be sleds number 162, 163, 164, and 165. Same as before. If you wouldn't mind, please take a look at those and let me know if you are familiar with their contents.
Worst unboxings ever.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Tell us what they are.
All 4 of these items are Winchester 12-gauge shot shells, and they all appear to have the same information on the shot shell of dry lock 3-inch with the number 2.
I'm going to hand you what's been previously entered into evidence as State's Exhibit
Paul and
213,
Maggie got
sled
off the
item 45. Please take a look at that piece of evidence and let me know if you are aware of what it is.
Yes, sir. This appears to be a box for ammunition in the 300 blackout caliber.
And does that box indicate the maker of that 300 blackout ammunition?
It does.
Who's the manufacturer?
Cellular and Billow.
S&B?
Yes, sir.
All right, this is State's Exhibit 260, which was previously marked for identification purposes only. State's Exhibit 260 contains sled items 35, 36, 37, 38, and 39.
Admitted without objection.
Mr. Greer, I'm handing you what's been now admitted into evidence as State's Exhibit 260. Please take if you would, please take a moment to review those items and let me know if you're familiar with them.
Yes, sir. I am familiar with this evidence.
And what are they?
These are sled items 35 through 39. These were each fired 300 blackout caliber cartridge cases with the head stamp of Cellular and Billow.
Thank you. What's been marked previously as State's Exhibit 261.
No, you're not.
This would reference sled item numbers 108 to 135. Collectively.
Thank you, JoJo, for the 20 gift memberships. That's very, very kind of you. Appreciate your support of the channel. You've been very, very good to me recently, and I really appreciate that. Thank you so much for all your
These items now admitted under State's Exhibit 261. Please take a moment to review those items, any notes or information you might have on them, and let me know if you're aware of what they are.
Yes, container AB was submitted to the laboratory, and it is to contain sled items 108 through 135.
I want to go
I am
back
familiar
to
with these items, and this package appears to not have been tampered with since I sealed it last, as I see my initials and seal date there at the bottom.
And what's inside that package?
Inside this package, there are 300 blackout caliber cartridge cases, as well as 12 gauge shot shells.
And did you have an opportunity to perform an analysis on these items?
Yes, sir, I did.
Question: how do you make a double murder trial boring?
Mr. Greer, I'm offering you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 398. That would reference slide item 22.4. And I believe without objection, we'll offer it into evidence.
All right, look, guys, it was me.
You would
Okay,
please take
I
a
did
look
it.
at that item and cross-reference
I
with your
committed
report and let me know
first.
if you're
It was
familiar
me.
with what it is.
All right, I did it. Okay, can we please stop this now? All right, it was me. I did it. I was hired by cartel people.
Yes, sir.
Thing.
This container
murders.
contains
Can we stop the trial
two
now,
sled
please?
items.
This is-
That's sled item 22.4, which is a swab of debris that I took, a reddish brown debris swab from the right side of the item 22 receiver.
Which item is 22?
Item 22 was the camouflage Benelli Model Super Black Eagle 3 semi-automatic shotgun. And it also contains sled item 22.5, which was another swab from that same shotgun, and that was reddish-brown debris swabbed from the left side of the item 22 receiver above manufacturer information.
And tell us a little bit about the swabs and what you're looking for with that.
Yes, sir. When I receive items of evidence, a part of my process in documenting the evidence and opening the evidence is to look to see if there's any foreign or trace material on that item. When I was examining this firearm and opening it for the first time, I took note of that. And when I did that, I noticed those two areas that I saw reddish-brown debris. In order to preserve that prior to my examination, I swabbed those items so that way they could be collected and maintained.
All right, Mr. Greer, I'm handing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 399, which references sled item 22.7. State would offer that into evidence after you identify it, and I believe without objection.
Yes, sir. I do recognize this, and this package is still sealed with my initials and seal date. Item 22.7 was the unfired 12-gauge shot shell that was submitted with the item 22 camouflage Benelli Super Black Eagle 3 shotgun. During my testing, I used that submitted ammunition that came with the firearm to test fire the weapon with, and that is represented here as sled item 22.7, State's Exhibit 399.
Okay. Submitted.
This is all just so I can spend more time with clock, by the way.
Before we move on to your analysis,
Please.
please
There's somebody linked.
tell me a little bit about the firearms identification process and the number of ways that you use to identify whether a firearm shot a particular projectile.
Sure. As we were discussing earlier, when I receive evidence into the laboratory and I begin my examination, there's a lot of documentation that has to happen. First, as we're opening the evidence, we're going to, one, make sure to preserve any of that trace or foreign material. We use photography to document the evidence as we're opening it and to photograph the actual item itself and that trace material or foreign material. We also use a lot of departmental worksheets where I take notes on the firearm, the magazine, the fired components such as the cartridge case or the bullet, and also any other thing that we need to document throughout the process, or unfired cartridges. We take note of all of that, writing down all of these characteristics that we're seeing on the evidence. In order to do our examination, though, we have to look at these fired ammunition components, these cartridge cases and these fired bullets, and look at their class characteristics. So we're going to count on a bullet. We're going to look at its rifling, trying to determine its caliber through weight and measuring it, and counting those number of lands and grooves that comprise that rifling, like we spoke earlier. That's what gives that bullet that twist. We document that. We may also look at those cartridge case and look at those things that have the same class characteristic. That could be the caliber of that cartridge case, the shape of that firing pin, and any overall features. Items that share the same class characteristics will compare together. And it's kind of like climbing a ladder at this point. Those items that share the same class characteristics, we climb to the next step on that ladder and we compare those items. We're going to look at those fired bullets with each other, those fired cartridge cases with each other, and we're going to look at all of that under high magnification. We use a comparison microscope in our laboratory to look at these items. And basically, if you think back to a biology lab that you may have had in school or some kind of science lab, when you look through a microscope, that's what we're doing. But we're using this comparison microscope to look at two things at one time. And we use it uses an ocular bridge so we can look through like a set of binoculars to look at these things. We can change the angles that we're looking at, all these tiny little scratches and striations and impressions on the evidence that you can't really see with the naked eye. We're going to look at it under that magnification and compare all of that to each other to help us reach our final goal, which is a conclusion. If we have firearms that are submitted, we'll also have that documented. Those firearms that have the same class characteristics, for instance, if we have a gun that's the same caliber as our fired bullet and it shares the same rifling specifications, then that means we can compare that bullet with test fires from the firearm. So I'll make sure the firearm is safe to fire, and we'll shoot that firearm within our laboratory. We have several different ways to do that with a water recovery tank and a tunnel that we're able to shoot and recover those test specimens that I physically shot from the firearm. I'll compare those test specimens with each other to look at how those marks that I was looking for under the microscope that we were talking about, to see how they're reproducing on those test fires in whether that be a bullet or cartridge case. Compare that under the microscope, and then compare that where necessary to the submitted evidence. After looking at all that, I reach a conclusion about whether this was fired by this item or not, or whatever that conclusion may be. I arrive at that, and I write that conclusion down. At that point in time, another qualified examiner within our firearms department will review the evidence themselves. They'll look at all the submitted evidence and compare that with each other and with those test specimens that I fired and arrive at their own conclusion. If they're in agreement, then they'll sign off on my conclusions and a report can be drafted. And that's how we get the information out to our customers through our report. At SLED, we have the 100% micro verification process, where everything that we're issuing a conclusion on is reviewed by another examiner. So that case file, all that documentation that I generate goes to that examiner or reviewer. It undergoes a technical review and administrative review before a report can be released. And in a nutshell, that's how we work each case. There are different parts, there's different items of evidence that we get in each case, but that's a quick overview of how each case has worked, and that process was applied to this case.
Thank you. Mr. Griff, speaking of the peer review process that goes on in the lab, is that conducted blindly, meaning the person reviewing your report doesn't know what your findings are?
That's correct.
Okay. Could you explain, so the subsequent reviewer doesn't know what you decided in your first prime opinion, is that right? Right.
I'll look at the evidence myself, arrive at a conclusion, and the second examiner will look at it and come to their conclusion on their own. Once they have arrived at their own conclusion, looking at the evidence with their own eyes on the microscope, they'll read my results to see if they're in agreement with what I have determined or not.
And that, I think you just testified, but was that done in this case?
Yes, sir, it was.
Before we...
In light of this wonderful testimony, I will read a statement from Mrs. Hogue Law from Hogue Law's community tab from 2 hours ago, wherein Mrs. Hogue Law says the following. Well, friends, Mrs. Hogue Law again. Here we are, 35 days from Rick's stroke, and Rick Hogue is home. I consider this the completion of phase 3 of recovery. Stroke/surgery, ICU, inpatient rehab. I admit that 20-ish days ago, I thought Rick was coming home in a wheelchair. This man continues to amaze and inspire with his dedication and determination, and walked through the door when we got home today. Our inpatient rehab team was miraculous. I hope we never see them again. Monday, we begin again. At least 6 weeks of outpatient rehab await, along with follow-ups of every doctor we've ever seen in the process. As we meet our new team, it's like going to a new school. Again, what is drop-off like? Will we like our teachers? What are the new rules we have to navigate? My only questions are, where do we park? What's the drop-off like? Will we like our therapists? And, of course, making sure everyone understands exactly who Rick Hogue is. We are very, very, very fortunate at the recovery Rick has made so far. We're grateful for all the people who have been supporting on this journey. I hope you pack snacks because we're not done yet. Before I close the door on phase 3 of stroke recovery, I have one last story to share. Y'all know that Rick's vocabulary is fulsome. We joke at our house that when Rick uses a word we don't know, it's because he's using the archaic definition. On at least a different dozen occasions, the definition starts with origin, archaic, Middle English. During a cognitive test, the therapist asked him to make smaller words using letters from larger words. He started listing a few words. Rick, legate. I stare quizzically. I've never heard this word. Therapist, legate? Me, I'm looking this up. Rick, it's the territorial governor type person in ancient Rome. It's probably going to be ancient definition you always laugh about. I start laughing because before I even read the definition, sure enough, it starts with ancient Rome. Next word, lead. I look quizzically. There's no A available in this word. Yes, lead, like the first line of an article. It's spelled L-E-D-E. Therapist and I exchange a few looks. Says, uh-oh, can Rick spell words? Spelled again, L-E-D-E. Me, I'm looking this up. Now, you all listen, by my count, has only been wrong twice in his life, and it's not one of those times. L-E-D-E is, in fact, the first line of a news article. Needless to say, I think Rick's cognition is intact. Hope the story is encouraging to you as it is to me, and also gave you a good laugh. I'm going to snuggle a kid, watch some TV, and every now and again glance over and see my husband sitting there at home. P.S. Hug your people a little extra today. Well, that's encouraging news. Glad that Rick is feeling better.
33 and 34. Could you tell me where these items were retrieved? Remind us where these items were retrieved from, first of all.
Sled items 9 and 10, that's State's Exhibit 33 and 34. Item 9 was from marker 9, and item 10 was from marker 10, which is my understanding that it was at the feed or storage room.
And I'm going to put these on the Elmo, but if you would tell us what your analysis of these items would be.
Yes, sir.
Objection to these opinions based on prior ruling.
Please proceed, Mr. Brick.
Yes, sir. When I compared and examined those two shot shells with each other, I determined that those two shot shells had been fired by the same firearm.
And do you know the make and model or the make and manufacturer of those two weapons, projectiles or shells?
Lead.
Yes, sir, I do.
Lead.
Sled item 9.
Lead.
Yes, sir.
Which
Moron.
Which item?
Item 9 is the red
Moron.
and color
I
shot
blame the
shell,
fact
which
that my
is
brain
State's
shut
Exhibit
down long
34.
ago.
Okay.
That was a
Uncivil
federal
law
premium
is at
double-aught buck
least
3-inch Magnum shot
15
shell.
IQ points
And
down.
sled item 10
Uncivil law
is the
apologizes
black and color
for
shot
his
shell, State
stupidity.
Exhibit 33, and that is a fired 12-gauge Winchester dry light number 2 shot shell.
Uncivil law could use a head massage right about now, to be quite honest.
All right, Mr. Greer, moving on to referencing item 22 collectively.
Yes, sir.
State's Exhibit 399, 22.7 on your report.
Yes, sir.
You know, at this point, we could actually start doing math on like the blood alcohol intoxication level equivalent
State's
of
Exhibit
uncivil law.
399.
How much
Did you have an
has
opportunity
uncivil
to-
law
Could you tell us what that is?
cognitive abilities? been
Yes, sir.
impaired?
That was the
Is
unfired
uncivil law
12-gauge
at
shot shell that
0.05?
was submitted originally with the item
0.08?
22 shotgun, which is the
0.1?
camouflage color Benelli shotgun.
0.15. How impaired?
Go ahead and open that
Is
package
uncivil
for
law.
us, please.
Yes, sir.
That's where we're at.
Do you have scissors or just?
Also, it's possible I might have falsely confessed to the murders earlier because my brain is not working properly, so there was that.
remind us again where that item was retrieved from?
This item was originally submitted with the item 22 camouflage Benelli shotgun that was submitted to the laboratory.
Meaning it was actually loaded into the shotgun?
When I received it, it was not loaded in the shotgun, but this was an unfired shot shell as it was submitted. This is the shot shell that I test fired in that shotgun.
All right, very good. Thank you.
Could I get like a super chat of like
Put it on the Elmo.
$100 because I could
Tell us
use
what the
massage or
manufacturer of this
something?
item is.
Yes, sir.
I'm gonna turn off video
This is
for a
also
while
a
because you don't need to see
12-gauge
this,
federal
but you
shot
can listen
shell,
to my voice.
and on the
background.
the shot shell
So
itself, it
we'll
also
do this
says Federal
without
Premium Double Lock Buck 3
Uncivil camera, and you can just watch Uncivil
Your attention back to state's
icon
item
with
34.
floating audio
Those two
or
items consistent with
pounds.
each other?
Look at the floating audio. Ooh. Ah.
Yes, sir. It does appear that they are consistent in construction and their head stamp information.
We.
If you would, since let's work through the number of firearms that were identified by you. Did you have an opportunity to test those firearms with the projectiles retrieved?
Yes, sir, I did.
What were your results for item 30, the Mossberg pump-action shotgun?
In regards
Let's
to
see what fun
the
voices
two
I
shot
have in the
shells,
voice mod. I haven't turned on the voice mod voice in a while. Let's see what I got.
my results after examining that, it was determined that the item
Let's
30
see.
shotgun did not fire the items 9 and 10 shot shells.
And could you move on to item, your item 31, state's item, one moment, I'm sorry. And the item you just referenced was state's
I'll
item
turn on the
89, the
narrator.
Mossberg shotgun. State's item, state's exhibit 90, sled item 31. Please tell us about that item.
Once in
Yes, sir.
South
Based on my
Carolina,
examination,
there
it
was a
I was
chicken.
able to determine that item 31
and this chicken
was not
was
fired by
living at
excuse
the
me,
Moselle
that item 31
farm
did not fire items
in
9 and 10.
Colton County.
All right, concerning
And it had a long,
state's exhibit
important
91, your sled item
Until one
32, that would be
a
a
dog
Benelli Super
got
Black
out of
Eagle
control
2, black in color. Could you
tore
tell us your
apart.
results of that?
Yes, sir. Based on my
Chicken
examination,
family
it was
was
determined that
completely outraged
item 32 did
by
not
this
fire
vicious
items
dog
9 and
killing
10.
kept
Item
by
32
the
was,
kennels.
however, recovered with
And
a
even
number
more
of rounds in it.
outraged
Is that
when the
correct?
family came down
Yes, sir. That is correct.
and saw
Were
the
those rounds?
discreet body of
Those,
it and
item
laughed
32,
and laughed.
the Benelli model Super Black
But
Eagle
then
2
the
shotgun
chickens decided
was
to
submitted
do
with
the last
two
laugh.
unfired 12-gauge
They
shot
took
shells,
a
Federal
firearm
and
that was on the
Winchester.
property, and they shot up the family with the shotgun and the rifle in a bloody vengeance, and then pinned the entire crime on the Murdaughs.
All right, did you have an opportunity to compare the shot shells with item 22, the camouflage color Benelli Super Black Eagle 3?
Yes, sir, I did.
All right, if you would, please tell us your findings concerning item 22.
Sure. When I compared sled items 9 and 10 with those test shot shells that I fired through
The
the item
story
22
of the love
camouflage
affair
shotgun,
between Clark
the results of those
and
comparisons
Steele
were inconclusive.
is a
I
long
was
and
unable to
exciting
determine
one.
whether or not items 9 and 10 were fired by item 22 or if they had.
And were you able to eliminate item item number 33 from this round of testing concerning the shotgun shells.
That's correct. The shotgun shells were not fired by the item 33 rifle.
Wow, thanks for. Wait a second. What did you just say?
Not fired by
This round of testing concerning the shotgun shells.
That's correct. The shotgun shells were not fired by the item 33 rifle.
Guys, did you hear that? Did you hear that? The shotgun shells were not fired by the rifle. The shotgun shells were not fired by the rifle.
Shotgun shells.
That's correct. The shotgun shells were not fired by the item 33 rifle.
Concerning the shotgun shells.
That's correct. The shotgun shells were not fired by the item 33 rifle.
The shotgun shells.
That's correct. The shotgun shells were not fired by the item 33 rifle.
Concerning the shotgun shells.
That's correct. The shotgun shells were not fired by the item 33 rifle.
Wow. What a revelation. What a revelation. Wow. I'm so glad we got the SLED firearms examiner to reveal this exciting information.
Moving on to your results. Moving on to your testing. Or did you conduct additional testing of 300 blackout rounds?
Yes, sir, I did.
And of the cases of the ammunition, both fired, spent, so shell casings, or unfired ammunition, were the ones we examined today that were retrieved from the scene, what make and manufacturer were they of?
The cartridge cases were head stamped with the S&B logo and 300 blackout caliber.
Did you have an opportunity to test fire and examine SLED item 33, states exhibit 88, the 300 blackout rifle, black in color?
Yes, sir, I did.
All right. Could you please tell us your results from that examination for that weapon?
In regards to test firing the weapon?
Correct.
Yes, sir. When I examined item 33, I test fired it using the item 34 magazine. That was the magazine that was packaged alongside the rifle. During that test firing, the first available cartridge in the magazine, as I inserted the magazine into the firearm, it was fed and chambered into the rifle correctly and as I expected. The cartridge was successfully test fired, and then it extracted and ejected from the rifle again as I expected it to. However, as the firearm cycled, meaning when that bolt was coming back forward to load the next available cartridge in the magazine, it failed to feed that cartridge into the chamber, and I had to manually cycle it to load the next cartridge into the chamber. That issue did not prevent me from test firing the firearm, and no further analysis to determine that cause was conducted.
Referencing your results, SLED item 128 in your exam, were you able to identify any cartridge casings that would have been fired by item 33 rifle? Your item 33 states exhibit 90.
I appreciate the super chat. Thank
States
you.
exhibit 88.
Yes, sir, I was.
And just to be clear, we're talking about this 300 blackout rifle. Is that correct? We're talking about your item 33?
Yes, sir, that is SLED item 33 that I examined and test fired.
What were you able to identify with the rounds recovered, 300 blackout rounds recovered? Please list their item numbers as well.
Yes, sir. So I compared all the 300 blackout cartridges that I received, and based on my examinations and comparisons, I was able to determine that SLED item 38, 109, 110, 121, 126, and 127 were fired by the item 33 rifle.
And those would be various items that were recovered that we've been through and identified in the state's exhibits. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
So some of them you would say were fired by item 33.
That is correct.
I know you mentioned before with item 33, or sorry, State's Exhibit 89, I'm sorry, State's Exhibit 88.
What are you talking about
I know
now?
you'd mentioned before that it wasn't working properly. Does that inhibit your ability to test it in any way?
No, sir. I was able to test fire that firearm and recover those test specimens that I needed in order to make those comparisons.
Do malfunctions occur in firearms from time to time?
Yes, sir, they can occur.
But nevertheless, you were able to simulate you were able to fire the weapon eventually.
Yes, sir. I was able to test fire the weapon and recover those test specimens that I needed.
All right, I'm going to reference SLED items 2 through 7, 35 through 37, 39, 108, 111 through 120. Do you understand which items I'm referencing?
Yes, sir, I do.
And how did you compare those, or how did the analysis go when compared with item 33, State's item 88?
Yes, sir. When I compared those items, that was items 2 through 7, 35 through 37, 39, 108, 111 through 120, and 122 through 124, and 128 with each other. And when I compared those with those test specimens that I fired through item 33, the results of those comparisons were inconclusive. Again, that means I was unable to determine if they had been fired by item 33 or they had been fired by another firearm or firearms with similar characteristics.
That's real helpful. That's great. Thanks.
Still on item 33, State's Exhibit 88, the recovered 300 blackout rifle. Were you able to compare the ejection and extraction marks of various 300 blackout rounds recovered and casings recovered?
Yes, sir.
And what was your findings concerning some of those items? And please list the items, and we will go back and identify State's exhibits in a minute.
Yes, sir. In looking at the mechanism marks on items 111, 114 through 115, 118 through 119, 123, and 128, I was able to determine that those items had all been loaded into, extracted, and ejected from the item 33 rifle at some previous time.
All right. Mr. Greer, I'm going to ask you.
I'm going to renew my objection to the next opinion that he's about to offer based on our prior rulings, just for the record.
Yes, sir. It's not,
Prior arguments and understanding the court's rule.
yes, sir.
Mr. Greer, I'm going to real quick reference on your chart, on your list, items marked SLED items 2 through 7, 35, 36, and 37, and SLED item 39. And that would be State's exhibits 63 through 68.
Old MacDonald had a farm.
Just please verify that I've handed you State's exhibits 63 through 68 and identify if they're correlating to items 2 through 7.
E-I-E-I-O. With a chicken shooting here and a chicken shooting there. Here a chicken, there a chicken, everywhere a chicken, chicken. Old McDonald's chickens got some vengeance.
Yes, sir. These States Exhibits 63 through 68 are SLED items 2 through 7.
Then I'm going to show you what's been marked as take the court's indulgence.
I honestly, at this point, don't know if I
State's
can cover
Exhibit
this next week. I don't know.
260.
I don't know if I can do it. I honestly don't know if I have it in me to continue doing it into next week. Fortunately, we do have the weekend in front of me, but right now, I honestly don't know if I can do this anymore because this is just so
State's Exhibit
plotting.
250, which correlates to SLED items 35 through 39. Please verify that for me.
Thank you, Sherry, for the 5 gift memberships.
Yes, sir. This is States Exhibit 260, which is a container that is to contain SLED items 35 through 39.
Okay. Slide items 2 through 7, State's Exhibit 63 through 68. After review of the crime scene, where were those located?
After reviewing the crime scene diagram, it's my understanding that those cartridge cases were at marker numbers that were near or around the body of Margaret Murdaugh.
And those would be 300 blackout rounds, is that right?
That's correct. They're 300 blackout caliber.
Or they were spent casings?
Yes, sir. Those are fired cartridge cases.
And State's Exhibit 260, items 35 to 39, what are those again?
Those were all fired 300 blackout caliber cartridge cases, head stamped with the S&B logo and 300 blackout caliber.
And where were those items recovered?
Listed on our submission documents, those were from the ground at side entrance door.
Have you physically been there to the Moselle property?
Yes, sir, I have.
Are you familiar with the ground at the side entrance door?
Yes, sir, I believe so.
Thank you, JoJo, for your very
Is that the
generous
side
super
entrance that
chat.
leads into the
Thank you, Tara,
pool
for your
table
10
and the gun room?
memberships. It really helps. Thank you so much.
Based on my understanding of the scene, yes, sir, I believe that is where those were collected from, near that door that goes into that room.
We have 300 blackout round casings collected from around Maggie's body, and we have 300 casings collected from the house. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And do you have any notes? Did you take any contemporaneous notes on the condition of your items 35 to 39, those collected at the side of the house?
Yes, sir, I do believe so. I'm going to reference my case file here to confirm.
Would referencing your file help you refresh your memory on that matter?
Yes, sir, it would. During my examination, when I looked at items 35 through 39, which were recovered near that door area, I did note that they were tarnished and weathered in my case file.
Mr. Greer, tell us what you found concerning those items.
Based on my examination, it was determined that items 2 through 7, 35 through 37, and 39 had matching mechanism marks, and it was concluded that those items had been loaded into, extracted, and ejected from the same firearm at some previous time.
So if I understand it correctly, the items collected right by Maggie had been loaded into, extracted to, and ejected by the same firearm that were identified, that items were picked up by the side of the house.
Yes, sir, that is correct.
I'm not really sure why that particular fact matters, but okay. I guess because they're a little bit far away from each other.
Additional items were collected as well. And did you have
Okay.
an opportunity to analyze those?
Yes, sir, I did.
And identify the sled item numbers, and then we'll identify the state's exhibit numbers.
Those were slid items number 108, 113, 116, 117, and 122.
Handing you what's been marked as state's exhibit 261, which includes various items. And what are they again?
Yes, sir. This is a container that contains multiple 300 blackout caliber cartridge cases and fired 12 gauge shot shells.
And in that in that collective bin include 300 blackout rounds of the items you just listed?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
All right. Tell us what your findings were for those items. And where were these collected?
Based on the submission documentation, those were collected from areas such as from to the left of a shooting chair near field, from a right corner near field, from in front of a shooter's chair under a table. Would you like me to identify each location?
For those items, have you had an opportunity to review some body-worn camera footage and evidence and kind of identify what that actually meant?
Oh, yes, sir.
And generally, when it says left leg and right leg and near the front or back, what is it talking about?
It appears that there's some type of shooting area that those were collected from.
Okay. What were your findings concerning those items?
It was determined that those items, and to include items 108, 113, 116, 117, and 122, also had those same matching mechanism marks, to conclude that they had been loaded into, extracted, and ejected from the same firearm as those at the crime scene around Margaret Murdaugh's body, and those several recovered from the home.
So the items collected around Margaret Murdaugh's body matched the items collected outside the house, which matched items that were collected in the field at the shooting range.
Yes, sir. I was able to identify that the cartridge cases recovered, items 2 through 7 near the body, did have matching mechanism marks with several of the items from the area around the home and those in the shooting field, and several of those in the shooting field, to conclude that some of those had been, that those had been loaded into, extracted, and ejected from the same firearm at some previous time.
So I'm going to reference slide item 8. That would be state's item 250, state's exhibit 250. I'm going to put it on the screen. What is that item again? Remind us, please.
Sled item 8 was one fired bullet, determined to be .300 blackout caliber, listed as near tire impression at marker 8.
Recovered from the scene.
Yes, sir, at marker 8.
Is that a fire projectile?
Yes, sir, that is a fired bullet.
Is that, how much does that bullet weigh?
According to my notes when I weighed that projectile, it weighed approximately 147.4 grains.
Handing you what's marked as exhibit 213. Remind us again what that is.
State's Exhibit 213 appears to be an ammunition box marked cellular and bellow and .300 blackout caliber.
What are the grains indicated on that box?
On the side of this box, it has information about the projectile, and it says 147 grains on the side.
Is state's exhibit up on the Alamo, is that consistent with a 147 grain projectile?
Yes, sir. That bullet appears to be intact, and based on my examination and looking at these fired bullets as a part of an examination, I would say that would be consistent with being 147 grains.
You have an opportunity to inspect sled item 12.
Yes, sir, I did.
Tell us your results of that.
Sled item 12 was one fired bullet, determined to also be .300, most consistent with being .300 blackout caliber, and it was listed as from bedding inside doghouse.
And did you have an opportunity to weigh that projectile?
Yes, sir, I did.
And what was the results of that?
When I weighed that projectile, it was approximately 146.8 grains.
Is that consistent with the 147 grain unfired ammunition?
Yes, sir, I would say that would be consistent with 147 grains.
lastly, I'm going to show you what's been marked as state and entered into evidence as State's Exhibit 143, 144, 148, and 150. Could you please remove those collectively and let me know if you are familiar with the make and manufacture of those items?
State's Exhibit 143 is a 12-gauge Federal shot shell. It says Federal Premium Double-Aught Buck 3-inch Magnum on the shell, on the side of the shell. State's Exhibit 144 is also a 12-gauge Federal shot shell. On the side of it, it says Federal Premium Double-Aught Buck 3-inch Magnum. State's Exhibit 148 is also a 12-gauge Federal shot shell. On the side of it, it says Federal Premium Double-Aught Buck 3-inch Magnum. And State's Exhibit 150 is also a 12-gauge Federal shot shell with the same information of Federal Premium Double-Aught Buck 3-inch Magnum.
Are all of those 4 exhibits that you just reviewed of the same manufacturer and same make and model?
Yes, sir. They appear to have the same information and also in their case, in their construction as well.
If I use one for demonstrative purposes, all the rest are the same?
Yes, sir. They appear to be all consistent.
Showing you what you just identified. This would be States 143. Is this the item you just looked at, Mr. Greer?
Yes, sir.
Showing you what's been marked as States Exhibit 34. Remind me again which item that is. Sled item 9.
State's Exhibit 34 was sled item 9. That's correct.
And what's the make and model of that?
Sled item 9, State's Exhibit 34, was a fired 12-gauge shot shell with the Federal Premium Double-Aught Buck 3-inch Magnum, red in color.
Showing you what's been marked as States Exhibit 399. This would be, where's item 9 from?
Item 9 is listed as from marker 9, and again, based on my understanding of the crime scene document, that was near or around the feed room.
And marked as States Exhibit 399, sled item 22.7. Where is that item from?
Sled item 22.7, State's Exhibit 399, was the unfired 12-gauge shot shell that was originally submitted as item 22 with the camouflage Benelli shotgun.
States item 4, and you've already reviewed this. Exhibit 4 for the state, 22 for you. Is that the same shotgun that you're referring to?
Yes, sir. This is my item 22 shotgun.
Camouflage Benelli Super Black Eagle 3. Is that right?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
And all those items are of the same model and manufacturer. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. They all appear to have the same head stamp information and information on the side of the shell, and their case construction all appears to be consistent.
Reference your item 10 now. Well, first let me collectively hand you what's been marked as States Exhibits 144. Sorry. States Exhibits 145, 146, 147, and 149 collectively. Please take them out individually, review them. Let me know if you recall what they are. Make and manufacture is what I'm interested in.
State's Exhibit 145, it's head stamp Winchester 12 gauge with dry lock 3-inch and a 2 on the shell. State's Exhibit 146 is head stamp Winchester 12 gauge. On the shell it says dry lock 3-inch number 2. State's Exhibit 147 is head stamp Winchester 12 gauge. On the shell, dry lock 3-inch number 2. And State's Exhibit 149, head stamp Winchester 12 gauge. On the shell, dry lock 3-inch number 2.
You know, to indicate where those items were recovered.
Based on the packaging.
What is the packaging? Where does the packaging indicate those items were recovered?
The packaging for State's Exhibit 145 says from estate box on bookshelf in gun room. State's Exhibit 146 says from Kent box on bookshelf in gun room. State's Exhibit 147 says from nightstand in Paul's room. And State's Exhibit 149 says from estate box on bookshelf in gun room.
And hand you what's been marked and identified as State's Exhibit 33, slide item 10. Where was that located?
Sled item 10, again, was a fired 12 gauge shot shell, head stamp Winchester 12 gauge on the side, dry lock 3-inch number 2, and that was located at marker 10, which again, based on my understanding, was near that feed room.
Identify, please, the make and manufacturer of that item.
Yes, sir. It was head stamp Winchester 12 gauge, and on the shell it says dry lock 3-inch 2.
Is that consistent with the make and manufacture of all the other items you just reviewed?
Yes, sir, it is.
Are those all the items you just reviewed, Mr. Greer?
Yes, sir.
All right, no further questions from the state.
We'll take a few minutes break, ladies and gentlemen. Do not discuss the case.
Okay, how's everyone doing? It's Uncivil Law. Hope everyone's having a great day. Uncivil Law has reached the end of his capacity. Um, you know, it's been 10 days. It's been 10 days, and we found our limits. We reached it. So far, we've got matching bullet casings to the house and the location of the murder, which, okay. Those are a fair distance apart. So they might have been fired at different times, or maybe not. You know, probably fired at different times. The rifle did not fire the shotgun shell was an amazing revelation. Really glad we brought in the firearms expert to get that revelation. The rifle did not fire the shotgun shell. Wow. Learn something new every day. Amazing. I just don't know, and I accept my limitations as a streamer. I don't know what more I can give. I don't know what more I can give. I am so tapped out. I'm tired. I've been streaming this for 2 weeks straight. I'm tired. There's not much happening. My brain has completely shut down. I think I'm a good 15, if not more, IQ points down right now. I really do. I feel it. I feel like my brain has melted. There are times where you feel like you've pushed beyond your own limits as intelligence. There are times where you feel like your intelligence is notched up because you're listening to really stimulating stuff and really thinking really hard. That's fun. I like that feeling. I like that feeling when you're pushing your mind to its limit and you feel like your IQ is actually beyond its own limits. And this is the exact opposite of that. I feel like my IQ has dropped. So rather than having my IQ elevated beyond its own limits by it being stimulated and push the boundaries of what my mind is possible, I have had my IQ lowered into a pit of despair that is disturbing and making it very difficult for me personally to understand any of the information that I'm being told, understand why it's significant, pay attention to it. My attention span is gone. It is gone. After 10 days of bullshit, I'm not surprised. I mean, I've given it my best, but man, I don't know. I don't know how people, I don't know how does Emily D. Baker do it? How's she do it? She's solo. How's she do it? How's she stay this engaging and interesting and stuff? How does Emily do it? I don't understand. Emily D. Baker has energy and stuff, and she remains cogent. How's she? I don't get it. She works really hard. I thought I worked really hard, but I guess I don't know, man. Power of Satan. Emily D. Baker's been streaming this basically solo, and I don't know how she's staying with it. Lots of memes. This is just not the case for you. Thank you for all you've done. Gift of gab. Maybe it's a gift of gab thing. Maybe that's it. Maybe it's no more complicated than that. EDB has gift of gab, and she just has a lot more to talk about, or she has a lot more ability to talk than I do. Yeah, she has a rabbit squirrel in her brain. Yeah, maybe that's funny. That's funny though. She does have employees to help. That's true too. That's true too. She's an extrovert. That's fair. She's under the impression the prosecution's smashing it. I'm not sure whether or not that's a fair characterization of EDB's impression. That may have been a fair characterization of her impression earlier, but I was listening to a little bit of her coverage yesterday, and it didn't sound to me like she was gung-ho prosecution, but maybe I haven't been listening to everything, but it sounded like she was more dubious. I know that she thought that the defense opened the door, which is an opinion I disagreed with, but I don't know that she's been overly pro prosecution as a whole. When's the state expecting the arrest? I don't know. This trial's supposed to be over, from what I understand, next Friday. It's amazing that that's going to happen. I don't know what's going on. We could watch someone else's commentary and comment over it. Maybe we'll try that. Maybe we'll try commenting over on top of someone else's commentary, because I could use a little bit of break from thinking for a little bit. Let's try Legal Mindset, see what he's got going on. Fuck. Kill me. Kill me. Kill me. All right, let's follow Legal Mindset.
Is it
For a
worth the
little
extra
while.
$1,000? Is what I'm saying.
Comment on top of this stream. That
All right, so we're waiting. I liked when it was like the girl talk at the table. It was just like this other chick talking to goth prosecutor, and they're having like
Goth prosecutor is
attorney
pretty
talk.
hot, though. I'm just saying, if goth prosecutor's available, I'm interested.
Joe, but it's going to be my main streaming rig. I'm upgrading from the laptop, so I finally got around to it. But I'm also going to use it for gaming.
Sir, cross-examination.
All right, maybe this will be interesting. I'm going to try to pay attention a little bit.
Just want to see if we can agree on one thing, and that is you're not here to tell this jury that any of the weapons in this room were used, in your opinion, to murder Maggie or Paul, correct?
Based on my examination of the evidence, was able to identify that there
we
were
go.
matching mechanism marks in items around, that's my friend, the body of
That wasn't
Maggie
the
Murdaugh
question.
And
Stop him. Interrupt him.
other
That wasn't the
areas of
question.
property. And
Say stop. That wasn't the
in regards
question.
trapped
to
on
the
this
two
one.
shot shells in comparison with those shotguns. Items 9 and
Hammer
10
him
were
on this.
inconclusive with the item 22 shotgun.
So that means you cannot, and you did not, and you are not offering an opinion that item 22 shotgun was used to murder Paul Murdaugh, correct?
My result was inconclusive.
Oh, he's being
And
invasive.
What that ultimately means is I'm not able to determine that.
This
It's-
little
It's a
fruit.
possibility that it could have been fired by that
Are you
shotgun, and it
fucking
also
kidding
could
me?
have been another
And I say that,
firearm
by the way, not
with
because of
similar
his accent,
characteristics.
but because he's giving a little
Meaning
squirrely
Just
answer.
equally possible it wasn't that gun.
That's possible.
He's being a worm.
And this 300 blackout. We know a 300
Answer the
blackout was used.
You could really
to
pin it
murder
down.
Maggie Murdaugh.
You could
correct?
try a little bit harsher when they give you
Based
an evasive.
on,
You are not offering the
The
opinion
evidence
that
that I
this was
received, I
the
did
gun.
have
It's
several
inconclusive, but you're not
projectiles
offering the
that were
opinion.
300
Like that's how
blackout caliber
I nail
that
it
were
down.
most consistent with that, as
Like
well
you're
as several
not saying it
cartridge cases
was.
that were head stamped.
You're not saying it's conclusive until I get a
And you're
yes.
not here to tell this jury, in your opinion, that this 300 blackouts laying on the floor here was used to murder Maggie Murdaugh, correct?
The results of the comparisons of those cartridge cases, items 2 through 7, with test fires from that
You
item
squirrely
33
little
rifle
shit.
were also inconclusive. I
Hey,
mean,
no, I
it's-
pin
that
him
was a
down.
yes or no
I
question.
pin him down.
if those
Okay,
cartridge
let's try
cases
this
were
again.
fired by item 33
Let's try
or
this
they've been
again.
fired by
You
another
are
firearm.
not saying you were able to determine this was the firearm.
Well, how many
It's inconclusive. All right, one more time. Let's try this until we get it right.
shot-
All right.
how many cartridges were found at the murder scene of 300 blackouts? Do you remember?
Based on my understanding of the crime scene,
Yes or no?
I believe I was only submitted items 2 through
Stop.
7. So that
Let's
would
try
be
again.
6 fired 300
Let's try the
blackout
question
caliber
again.
How
cartridge
many shot
cases.
shells are you hiding in your
And again,
asshole right
I
now?
was not at the scene to recover those. That's just what was submitted to me and based on my understanding of the evidence.
Okay. I'm gonna stay on the 300 blackout. For a
No,
moment,
you're
I'm
not
gonna
getting
show you
good
what we
answers.
marked
You
as-
need to stick with them until you get clean answers. Like I'm
Exhibit
gonna ask this
69.
question until you actually answer it. Asked and answer only applies when you fucking answer the question, so we can keep doing this.
Yeah. And you had your file there, but take a look at defendant 69 and see, tell us if you recognize that document as coming from your firearm.
Oh, wait, is this
Report.
Exhibit 69?
Extended.
Was it?
Yeah, apparently.
Is this Exhibit 69?
See
Apparently.
how zoned out I am from this freaking asshole. 69. All right, drink.
Oh, we're supposed to drink. Oh, shit.
All right, I finished the coffee.
This is cross.
To Exhibit 69 with this witness. This witness of all witnesses is 69ing us. Cheers, guys.
Yes, sir. This state's exhibit,
Defendants. Exhibit.
excuse me, yes, sir. Defendant's exhibit 69 does appear to be a copy of 2 pages
Banner.
from my case file.
This is 69 for
Your Honor,
69
we would
for
move
sure.
Defendants exhibit 69 in the evidence.
69, baby.
Oh, man. It's admitted.
Yeah. This is page number 67 and 68.
Yeah, Francie, I agree with you. That is the type of answer
And
politicians
while we're
give.
doing
But the
that,
nice thing about a courtroom is you can be like, no,
Agent Greer.
stop.
Is this your
Let's try
worksheet
again.
for the 300 blackout that's here in the courtroom.
Until the judge tells you to stop. You know?
Exhibit number 88.
And then you just do it for the next question. And be
Yes,
like,
sir.
we're going to
That
do this
would
again.
be a copy of my worksheet for sled item 33.
Okay. And this is the item that you're not prepared
Legal
to tell
mindset
the
isn't for
jury
you.
here
I'm just trying to do something
that
to keep my
your
energy
opinion
up,
was
Deidre.
not used to murder
Is it
Maggie
okay
Murdaugh.
if I please watch Legal
Based on my
Mindset? Is
examination
it okay if I
of the
please
cartridge cases,
use their
or several of
commentary
those
as a
cartridge
basis to keep me
cases
going?
that
Because
were
I need
recovered from all the
help.
locations,
Is
the
that
results
okay
of
with
those
you,
comparisons were
please?
inconclusive. I'm unable to determine if they were fired by that firearm or by another firearm or firearms with those similar characteristics.
But you did test fire this item 33, correct?
Thirst is
Yes, sir, I did.
And on the second page of Exhibit 69, Doug, if you'll pull up the description of what happened, and if you'll tell the jury what problems you encountered when you test fired item 33, which is State's Exhibit 88.
Yes, sir. During test firing, I loaded the magazine with cartridges. That was sled item 34.
Would you
And I
prefer Nick? I
inserted
mean,
that
I can
into
bring
the
over.
magazine
Would you
well
prefer
of
Nick
sled item
as
33?
opposed to that? I mean, we could do that stream. I'm just trying to find something anything to keep this interesting, because I'm dying. I am dying, and I need help. Oh, fucking everyone's over on Rakita stream. Fuck me. That just depresses me. It depresses me. No one wants to be on my stream.
Time was a
There you
vertical
go.
tank
Hopefully that'll make you
filled with
happy.
water. So I had to hold it in kind of a strange position. But through all my test firing, I did have this situation occur. But again, no other testing to determine why that was happening was conducted, and I was able to test fire that gun and collect those test specimens.
And is it fair to say you were not able to rapid fire, pull the trigger, pull the trigger, pull the trigger, and shoot bullets in immediate succession?
During my testing, I had to manually load that next cartridge in, so it just took the amount of time that it would take me to do that step, if you will. Instead of the firearm performing that function for me, I had to do it, and that's what I did in this case.
Okay. And then, all right, were you able to get the projectile out of the water tank and compare it to the two projectiles found at the murder scene? I believe, I don't know if it's item 8 or as part of your analysis, did you compare projectiles from item 33 to the projectiles found at the scene?
Yes, sir, that is correct. I did collect those test-fired bullets from our water tank, and I did compare that where appropriate with the fired projectiles that were submitted.
And did you reach any conclusions based upon that projectile comparison?
Yes, sir, I did.
And what were those conclusions?
Based on the observable physical characteristics of items 8 and 12, Those are sled items 8 and 12. I determined those to be most consistent with 300 blackout caliber. Item 8 may be suitable for identification with other evidence, and item 12 sustained damage, and it was unsuitable for identification with other evidence. That means that due to the damage that it had sustained, there were no identifying features that I saw under the microscope that I would use for identification purposes. I also received several other projectiles and fragments that I
Just answer the fucking
to
question.
the item 33 rifle. Due to damage in their size, the calibers items 11, 66, and 137 could not be determined. They were just too small for me to make any determination about their caliber. Due to damage and the limited marks of value that I saw on item 11, specifically the fired bullet jacket fragment and the item 66 fired bullet jacket fragments, I was concluded that those may or may not be suitable for identification, and compared those later on to the rifle. Based on the no marks of value that were displayed on the item 11 bullet jacket fragments, item 11 piece of lead, and item 66 pieces of lead, I determined those were unsuitable. So again, due to there being no marks of value for me to compare, I was unable to compare those with those test bullets. Item 137 bore some type of strided marking. However, I was unable to determine the origin of those marks and use those for an identification purpose. And it was determined that it was also unsuitable. Lastly, the 3 items that I did compare with those test specimens that fired from those rifle, which were item 8, the item 11 fired bullet jacket fragment, and the item 66 fired bullet jacket fragments, the results of those comparisons were also inconclusive with each other and with those test specimens, and that was due to damage and just insufficient markings for us to base our opinion on. It could not be determined whether those items were fired by item 33 or by another firearm or firearms with similar characteristics.
So Exhibit 250 is the projectile that was found by marker 8, I believe. Just confirm that one, please.
Yes, sir, that is correct. State's Exhibit 250 was sled item 8, near tire impression at marker 8. That's correct.
And I believe you just, as you're reading from your report, told the jury that you couldn't make any conclusions about the projectile seized at the scene from the projectiles fired in a water tank from this 300 blackout laying on the floor in here. Is that right?
That's correct. The results of those comparisons were inconclusive, so I'm unable to determine if item 8 was fired by the rifle or by another firearm with similar rifling characteristics.
Well, aren't the rifling marks on a projectile as it goes through the barrel more reliable when making firearm identifications than most any other tool marks that you rely upon?
I wouldn't say they're more reliable. We do rely on the rifling in that barrel to mark those projectiles, and that's what gives those markings on puts those markings on those bullets. So we're able to look at them and do a firearms identification examination on them. Tools, firearms, all mark evidence. Again, I was unable to do that in this case, and my results were inconclusive. I mean, that's due to the damage that these may have sustained and to just insufficient markings that were on the bullet when I looked at it. There was not enough of those markings on there for me to determine if they were fired by item 33.
But item 8, Exhibit 250 there, do you recall whether there was human organic matter on that projectile?
Documented in my notes that there was any foreign material or trace on it as I received it.
But we know that that projectile was recovered at the murder scene at marker 8. Is that right? near the tire.
Yes, sir. Near the tire impression at marker 8, that's correct.
And you made comparisons of of shell cartridges, the back end of the full bullet that were collected at the shooting house on the property at Moselle. Did you not? I don't have the numbers, but we went through them a moment ago. You did. Do you remember? Let me ask you to take a look at the projectiles that were found. I believe they're items, well, nope. They are items 108 through 125. I'm not sure what their state exhibit numbers are, but if you look at 108 through 125 in your report, those are spent .300 blackout caliber cartridge cases.
Sled items 108 through 125 was determined all to be fired .300 blackout caliber cartridge cases.
And in your report, it references left of shooting chair near field, right front corner, et cetera. Maybe you don't know, but or are you aware those were collected at a gun house at a firing range on the property?
Yes, sir. And I'm going to back up. I misspoke earlier. It's 108 through 124 are the .300 blackout caliber cartridge cases. But based on my understanding of everything, yeah, there was some type of shooting field or stand that I believe those were collected from, and that kind of seems to coincide with the item descriptions, which is what I'm familiar with.
Okay, and were you aware that when you're sitting in the shooting house and you're target practicing, that there was a earthen berm that the shots were fired into?
No, sir. I've never seen this area.
Okay. Would it have been helpful to your analysis if the investigators had dug out items from that earthen berm of the projectiles, such as what's sitting in front of you as State's Exhibit 250?
We're able to look at bullets that are submitted. We don't have any type of restraint. It may have been helpful. Bullets, as we've seen here, come to us in all shapes and sizes due to their damage that they may have sustained. So I'm unable to really answer that question without seeing the evidence and determining if it would be helpful.
Okay. I want to ask you a little more about the conclusions that you've reached as documented in your report, and I've particularly focused on item 128, and I'm still talking about the Buster .300 blackout that's laying on the floor here in the courtroom. And just so we're clear, there were items, the cartridges that we talked about, the back end of the bullet, that you were able to conclude that they were fired by this gun, right?
Yes, sir. I was able to determine in looking at the totality of the marks on those cartridge cases that there were items submitted to me have been fired by that firearm.
And your conclusion that they've been fired by this gun, and we're talking about the cartridges. One is cartridge 38, which is up by the residence, correct?
Yes, sir. Sled item 38, that's my understanding, and it was submitted as being recovered from near a door.
Well, and that's the door that you testified that you saw when you went on the property.
Yes, sir. I believe so. That's my understanding.
And so it's been a long week, 2 weeks, but there was a sled agent early in the case who had body cams going around picking up spent shell cartridges adjacent to that door, and you believe this is one of those, correct?
That's my understanding, that those items came from the area outside that gunroom door.
and you concluded that item 38, along with some other items found at the shooting house, which would be, well, these 109 and 110 you concluded. And where are 109 and 110 found? Yeah, that's the shooting range, correct?
Yes, sir. As submitted to the lab, collected, item 109 was collected from right front corner near field, and item 110 was in front of shooter's chair under table near field.
Okay. And so, one spent cartridge found next to the door up at the house, main residence at Moselle, and then you've got 5 found at the shooting range that you say, in your opinion, were fired by this gun.
Yes, sir. That is my opinion.
But then you've also matched other cartridges, according to your report, items 111, 114, 115, 18, 19, 123, and it says 128 in your report that you say were loaded into, extracted, and ejected from this rifle.
That's correct.
But you don't say they were fired from this rifle.
That's correct.
But they were spent shell casings found at the shooting range, correct?
Yes, sir. And those were fired cartridge cases in its just plain term. They had been fired. When I'm looking at the totality of all these markings, again, we go back to those 5 areas that we're really going to look at. The marks that I saw that were in agreement, that I made that conclusion and based my opinion on, were those ejector or lug and extractor marks, and that's not what detonated that primer. So that's the difference there. So we know those marks can occur when that cartridge or fire cartridge case is cycling through there, but that's not what detonated that cartridge, and that's the difference in that result. Yes, sir.
Well, let's look at it from the other side of the coin. So you're saying that the breech marks on the primer, where the firing pin hit the primer, did not match up. Item rifle 33, the breech marks on the firing pin didn't match up on these spent cartridges, 111, 114, 15, 118, 119, 123, and 128.
No, sir. When I did compare all of these cartridge cases to each other and with those test cartridge cases fired from it, those items, 111, 114, 115, 118, 119, 123, and 128, due to insufficient corresponding markings on that primer and in those breech face marks, I was unable to determine if they were all fired by item 33 or by another firearm or firearms with similar characteristics. I did examine those, and the results of those comparisons were inconclusive.
So you're saying you didn't, you're not telling the jury they don't match, it's just you couldn't match them. They're inconclusive.
My results of those comparisons were inconclusive. Yes, sir.
Okay. And then you also in your report reached the same, you conclude that it's inconclusive on whether item 33, State's Exhibit 88, are you saying it's inconclusive whether item 33, Exhibit 88, fired 2 through 7?
That's correct.
Are you saying it's inconclusive as to whether item 33, which is Exhibit States 88, at some point in time, loaded and ejected, extracted from item 33?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Well, we just talked about there's a difference between firing and then cycling and extracting.
Yes, sir.
Tool marks.
Yes, sir.
Did you look at State's Exhibit 88 to see if the extraction marks matched up to items 2 through 7?
Based on the evidence that I received,
Whoever was
I was
asking
able
for
to
my email,
determine
my
that
email
items
address
2
is
through
posted in the
7,
video
had
description.
those matching
My
mechanism
email is
marks
posted
with,
in my
items
channel about
35
page.
through
It's posted
37,
on my link tree.
39, 108,
My email is
113, 116 through
Kurt at
117, and
uncivillawllc.com.
122, to conclude that those items have been loaded
posted
into,
all over the place.
extracted, and ejected
Sorry about that.
from the same firearm at some previous time.
But you can't identify the firearm, the gun.
Correct. In terms of being fired by, I was able to determine that several items had been fired by that rifle, and the results of those comparisons with the other items, items 2 through 7, 35 through 37, 39, 108, 111 through 120, 122 through 124, and 128. Those comparisons with each other in those test cartridge cases fired by the item 33 rifle were inconclusive.
And so, let's see if I can understand what you're talking about with regard to your conclusions on that items 2 through 7, which were shell casings found near Maggie's body, and other spent cartridges found around the Murdaugh house and at the shooting range. You conclude that they were loaded into, extracted, and ejected from the same firearm at some previous time.
That's correct.
Thank you
And
for the
those,
email.
I
That's
guess we have the
good.
same issue. You looked at the
Appreciate it.
primer, the breach marks on the primer, and you couldn't make any conclusions on those, right?
When I looked at the primer area where those breech face and firing pin impressions are, the results of including that in a fire-by result were inconclusive. And that is the results for items 2 through 7, and 35 through 37, 39, 108, 111 through 120, 122 through 124, and 128.
And again, aren't the breach marks in the firing pin, aren't those more reliable than extractor marks when you're doing an analysis?
During the marking of these specimens, if you will, through firing, the machining process to create those firearms.
Does defense have their own experts? I would
we see
imagine
tool
so,
marks
yes, but we're not
on
in the defense's case, obviously.
fire cartridge cases and fire bullets from multiple different processes. I can't say that one's more reliable to mark than
Any
the
fun
other.
weekend plans
It's
this
all
point?
due to the
Sleeping.
machining process, and also due to the individual wear and tear of that firearm through use of it in repetitive use or abuse of the firearm. That can also add to the markings in each of those locations that we're looking at, whether it be something from the breech face, from the firing pin, those extractors and ejectors, or even the rifling in the barrel. All of those variables can play into those markings and how we see those and how they reproduce on our evidence and how individual they are to each gun.
Well, that does bring me to another point. Isn't your opinion based upon conclusion that every 300 blackout manufactured in the world, whether it's put together by John Bedingfield or mass assembled at Palmetto State Armory or anywhere in the world, that each one, when they cycle a bullet through and eject it, will produce its own unique, like no other in the world, its own unique tool mark? Isn't that what your opinion is based on?
Again, during the manufacturing of these components,
Is that a yes or no?
I would like to explain it a little more.
Your Honor,
if
can I get a
possible.
yes or no and then an explanation?
You're objecting, you can answer the question.
Restate the question.
Isn't your opinion based upon the presumption or the basis of your opinion is that every 300 blackout manufactured in the world produces its own unique set of tool marks when it cycles a bullet through? Yes or no?
I would like to answer that with a little bit of explanation if possible.
Your Honor, I would appreciate a yes or no, and he can explain all day long.
If you can answer yes or no, you must answer yes or no, then explain.
Can you repeat the question one more time? I apologize.
Is it your opinion, in this case, about the shell cartridges being fired from the same 300 blackout? Isn't that based upon your presumption that each 300 blackout manufacturer in the world makes unique tool marks when it cycles a bullet and ejects it?
It's hard to say. I have not looked at every 300 blackout that's in the world, so it's hard to answer that question. But again, based on my knowledge of that process and how they're made, I'm able to support my answer without answering it in a yes or no manner, I suppose.
But you're saying you found shells here, cartridges here.
At least he was trying to pin him down a little. Now, if you could continue that idea
and they all
and really pin him
have
down and show him squirming, it'd be like,
very,
is it possible that two firearms,
not all
is
the
it
marks
possible
are identical, but
203
enough
is it
marks are
possible
close enough
300 blackouts
to being
would produce the
identical. In
same
your
tool
opinion, they were
markings?
fired by one weapon in the
You ask it
world.
that way. There's a lot of ways to pin
It's
him
my
down on
opinion
this.
that those had all been cycled through the same firearm at one point in time. Yes, sir.
But not fired by the same firearm.
No, sir. That's not what my conclusions say. As far as being fired by that firearm or by the same gun, those results are inconclusive.
So that means that the markings on the breech, because they were all fired, they all have a fire pin hitting the primer, and you call that breech markings, correct?
Yes, sir. Those are breech face markings that we would see on the primer.
And there were similarities between those where you couldn't reach a conclusion.
That's correct. Those shared, again, those same class characteristics.
I almost have, I have 10 million views on
we compare
YouTube.
those to each other.
Let's see what my total views are on my channel. That's a good question.
There's not enough
There's some
agreement.
around here somewhere where that is.
To reach a conclusion based on my training and experience and looking at all of these cartridge cases.
Where are
that
my
I could
total
say that they were
views?
fired by the same firearm, and that's how we arrived at that conclusion.
And
Lifetime?
can you say when those tool markings were made on the?
It looks like it's about 10 million.
Scratch that.
Oh,
Is there
no.
any way to determine?
9,975,311
when
to be
the shell
precise.
casings, cartridges were cycled and ejected in this one firearm that's unique to all others in the world? Like,
I cannot date when those were fired or when those were loaded into, extracted, and ejected from a firearm. No, sir. I cannot put a time stamp, if you will, on that. No, sir.
and you can't state whether it was a 300 blackout assembled in 2016, given for Christmas gift, or if it was a replacement given in 2017 or 2018. I mean, you don't know what year the gun was that cycled and ejected?
That's correct. I do not have knowledge on the year of manufacture of these firearms.
Okay. Now let's move on to the shotguns. And you were clear a few things up. You were
Appreciate everyone who's here.
a lot of
Appreciate everyone's here. Appreciate the 267 of you are
items that
here.
were taken.
I'm disappointed that none of my LawTube friends
unfired
apparently want to join me on my stream.
shot
That
shells.
sucks.
And this is 12 gauge. I'm going to show you exhibit 143, 144, 145, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, all the way to 50. And I'm not going to ask you to take these out, but I want you to take a look at all those and
I had sent a message.
tell me.
I had sent a message to, I think, like 12 or 15 of the LawTube members, and I'd said, like, if you guys ever want to join me, just send me a link, send me a note. They apparently don't want to join me. They're on other streams. I don't know why. I guess they don't want to join me for whatever reason. They don't want to be part of this stream. I guess I wasn't as close to them as I thought I was. And I haven't gotten an invite from Friday Night Frenzy. I didn't get an invite last week either. I sent a note say, hey, can I get an invite? And he dropped me a link. But it's like, I don't want to beg. You know, I want to be invited. It's like, I sent an invite out to everyone. It's like, if you ever want an invite, let me know. They don't want it. Didn't get an invite for Friday Night Frenzy. I guess I'm not going on. I guess they don't want to be part of my channel. Not sure why, but that's where we're at. It's very disappointing. I thought I was closer to these people, but I guess not.
Okay. And so you understand that is June, July, 3 months after these murders, correct?
Yes, sir. That September 13th will be several months after the murders.
They're not stuck up at work. They're on other people's channels as we speak.
Here, it appears they were from different locations and where they were collected from. Yes, sir.
Okay. And I guess you don't know whether, I mean, the property of Moselle was open to Alex Murdaugh, I mean, from June till September, as far as you know, right?
I have no knowledge of that. No, sir.
And if he had the mind to, he could go out and remove every shotgun shell on the whole property, right?
I have no knowledge of how the scene was maintained.
Right. But it would appear that no one removed any shotgun
I
shells
saw Ian
since you
on
have them there in your lap, right?
Ian on
It does appear that these were collected from these areas listed on the package on September 3rd, or I assume September 13th as it's dated and labeled by the person who collected these.
Okay. I'm going to show you Exhibit 63 and 60, and what I marked is Exhibit 63 and 64. And these are pages 51, 55 from your report. And will you just confirm this for me? 63, 64, pages 51 and 55 from your report.
Yes, sir. I do recognize Defendant's Exhibit 63 appears to be a copy of
Ian was on the
item
repeated
10
screen.
worksheet for the fired shot shell. And Defendant's Exhibit 64 appears to be a copy of my worksheet for sled item 14.
What I
which
say I'm
were,
closest to?
24
Nate the lawyer,
birdshot
probably.
bullets.
Thank you. Your Honor, I'd like to introduce into evidence Defendant 63 and 64 at this time. And just, Doug, if you'll pull up 63, which is page 51 of the report, and Agent Greer, will you tell the jury what this is?
Yes, this is just a copy of one of our standard worksheets that we use to document evidence in the laboratory. So this is an ammunition and cartridge case worksheet, which is why I utilized it when I was documenting the item 10 fired shot shell. And this contains my notes that I took on that item.
Okay, and just so that we're clear, are we talking about Exhibit 33? This is the black colored shot shell that was found in the feed room where Paul Murdaugh was murdered?
Yes, sir, that is correct. State Exhibit 33 is the item we're discussing.
And you have a name under notes. It says on shot shell, says, quote, dry lock 3-inch 2. You see that?
Yes, sir, I do.
You see that, Doug? Can you highlight that? Thank you. And again, the exhibit there, and that's what you're talking about, right?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And number 2 is the size of the pellet?
Yes, sir, that would refer to the size of the pellets or birdshot that was that we would believe to have been loaded into that cartridge, or that shot shell, excuse me.
Okay. And then if you'll go to Exhibit 64, page 55, Doug, and it's 55 in your report, Agent Greer. And are these the pellets that were provided to you to analyze the number 2 size pellets?
Yes, sir. Sled item 14, I determined to be 24 birdshot pellets, and those were listed as being from dog food storage room.
Okay. And if you'll look at under the caliber, it says number 2, and it says steel. These were steel pellets, were they not?
Based on my examination, and based on
Yes
my
or no would be
observation, yes, sir, they were magnetic, so that would provide that they had some steel in them. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Just say there's
And,
steel, like a normal person.
And birdshot can either be steel or lead, I suspect. Maybe there's a third kind.
There can be multiple different metals used in making pellets. Lead is one, steel is one. There are also other metals that can be used in making pellets. Yes, sir.
Have you analyzed any of the Winchester dry locks that were seized in September of 2021 to see whether they're steel or lead?
No, sir. I have not analyzed their contents.
Okay. Now here you've got Exhibit 64. You've got grain weight, and why don't you explain what you're referring to? I guess I needed. I'm missing a page for that. So if you'll look at your page 54 in your file, because it says continued from Wade, and I guess that's on page 54. Is that right?
No, sir. That's just referencing from the weight category. That's kind of at the top portion of the page.
Okay.
I just continued my thoughts.
Lead
down
is cheap
below.
and heavy.
Well, so help me out
That's
here.
why.
You say
Lead
there's
is-
5
lead is
pellets
cheap
weigh
and
3.4
heavy.
grams, and then 18 pellets
And
only weigh 3.6
carries a lot of
grams.
momentum.
How does that work?
Lead is very
I
common
weighed
for
each of
firearms.
those pellets individually, and again, we're weighing
Not
in
for
grains.
waterfowl. It's
And
banned
when
by
I
federal law.
weighed those on our scale, that is
So,
what I documented.
Little
5
bit
of them
a little bit of
weighed 3.
gun information. Lead is banned, but lead is banned for waterfowl because it's near water and therefore could pollute the water. Clean Water Act. But lead is all things considered, is superior to steel because it's a lot heavier, carries a lot more momentum, a lot more energy because of the weight differential. So if you're going to use steel versus lead, you have to use more of it or a larger size of it or stuff like that. And so there's some disadvantages to it. But lead is extremely common for non-waterfowl.
I have my notes here. I believe you said
Haven't seen your email
147
yet. Let's
grains.
take a look. Oh, I seen your email. Yes, I did. And I said, thank you for the Wookiee. I smiled and said it on stream. I said, thank you for the Wookiee. You may not have heard me, but I did appreciate
Was
your email.
approximately
Thank you.
147.4 grains.
And are you familiar with how 300 blackout ammunition is sold? What weight classes there are?
I don't know all of the different weights that are within that caliber, no, sir.
Do you know there's like a subsonic and then supersonic?
Again, I don't know everything about that caliber.
You're an idiot. Of course you know the answer to that question. Of course, there's subsonic and supersonic ammo. What the fuck are you talking about?
There are various weights that bullets are sold in for each caliber, so I would not be surprised at other grain weights, but I don't know all of them off the top of my head today.
So, as far as you know, the only weight you could ever get is 147 grams, right?
When I weighed these items, item 8 and item 12, they weighed approximately 147.
For a firearms expert, you don't seem to know a lot about firearms. Thank you very much for your Wookiee thing. That was very nice for the email. It did make me smile. It got a snicker out of me.
You mentioned in your testimony that item 32, which is Exhibit 91, had...
Let me just help you out, by the way. Like, you can get it well, if you can't buy it, you can manufacture it yourself. You can actually cast your own bullets, and some people do. But you could basically get any caliber and any grain weight, pretty much. And then you put however many grains of powder you want behind it, and, you know, you kind of can do anything. You know? I mean, you kind of can do anything. So, yeah.
No, sir. The markings on that shell said a Longbeard XR.
Nope. And the Winchester found in the murder scene is a dry lock, correct?
The item... a 10-shot shell, which was recovered from Marker 10, which I do believe, from my understanding, is around the body of Margaret Murdaugh, was a Winchester 12-gauge shell, and it says dry lock on it. Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. And then item 22, which is the gun that Alex Murdaugh came down, was holding or was leaning up against his Suburban when Deputy Daniel Green.
By the way, I just got I got a DM from Danny, apologize. Got an email or Twitter DM from Danny. Just said, I've been so sick I haven't even appeared on Nick's streams. I'm sorry, but I got to get better. And just you know, DM'd her back, said, sorry to hear you've been unwell. Hope you feel better soon. So at least one person cared enough to say, I'm sorry I can't make your stream because I've been unwell. So hey, that's one person who actually cares about me to some degree. That's nice.
As a firearms examiner, I would recommend shooting the ammo that your firearm is chambered for. I can't predict what would happen if you shot that shot shell or attempted to.
And I hope you get better, Danny. I really do.
All right.
I assume that she didn't mind me mentioning that she's not been feeling well. That didn't seem like super private information, so I assume that was okay.
You spoke of this review process at SLED with regard to
Virginia,
your
sure. I lived in
tool mark
Virginia
analysis,
for
and you said
15 years.
You do your analysis.
Yes, I lived in Virginia for 15 years. I'm licensed in Virginia. Yeah.
Yes, sir. I look at the evidence, reach a conclusion, and write or type those conclusions. Yes, sir.
And then a reviewer, someone, and in this case, what was his name? Initial CW?
The reviewer was Chad Smith, another examiner within our department.
Is he on the same level with you at SLED?
He is also an examiner.
Joe did come on my stream.
I don't know his
Joe came on my stream for a little
but he
bit.
has been employed
Nate
in the
appeared on my
department
stream a little bit.
longer than I have,
And
completing firearms examination.
Logic appeared on my stream a little bit. And
then
potentially
he
Criminal
looks at
appeared
it,
on my stream a little bit.
but does he prepare
there's
an
a few
independent
people
report
who
and then
made some
flips
effort
the
to
two
appear.
over and see if
Nice.
they match, or does he just take a look at it, come up with his thoughts, and then look at your document to see if he agrees with it?
He does not prepare an independent report. No, he does look at the evidence and arrive at those conclusions, and he would read my results. If he agrees with them, then he will sign off on those conclusions. If he disagrees with them, then there's also a procedure for that to happen.
Now, you mentioned that in order to make
All
an
right,
identification
I'll
or a
stop
match,
feeling
or
sorry for myself.
you have to have.
Stop feeling sorry for myself. I'm sorry. Guys, I'm sorry. Guys, I'm sorry. I apologize. I apologize to you. Okay. As I said before in this very stream, I'm a little tired. I'm a little frazzled. It's been 10 days of this. It's been mind numbing. Me trying to listen to this and me trying to find something to care about. And this has been a little bit mind numbing. And I'm a little bit tired. And some nights I haven't slept particularly well. Although I slept fine last night, but I didn't sleep well like one night this week. And, so I apologize for being a little bit despondent. I probably should have kept that to myself. You guys rock. I'm sorry about that. I was just feeling a little bit frustrated, and I probably should have handled that better, but appreciate you guys' tolerance of me.
To learn what that sufficient agreement.
I think it was Wednesday or Tuesday night where I didn't sleep well on Wednesday. Like I was really fucked up. That didn't help.
Is to make our identification.
Okay, and you gave this jury an analogy like a ladder, and that you have to get up so many steps as you reach. The first step, I guess, would be rifle or shotgun, right? And then the second step would be caliber of rifle, if we're talking about a rifle. And then you keep going up the ladder.
If you need a firearms expert to tell you whether it's rifle or shotgun.
Fired bullet. If they are, then we can compare those. If, for instance, if a bullet has 5 lands and groove and it's going to the right, and we compare that to another bullet that has 6 lands and grooves and it's going to the left, then we know those did not come out the same barrel, so there's no need to do it in any type of comparison there. However, if we look at 2 that have those same lands and grooves, those 5 lands and grooves, and they're all going to the right, they're the same caliber, then we'll go up that ladder, if you will, and compare those individual characteristics to see if they were fired by the same firearm or not.
Tell this jury how many steps of that ladder you have to go up before you can make an identification.
As far as making an identification, it's based on the marks that what we see under the microscope. When we're looking at all of these marks, we want to see that sufficient agreement. Again, we want to see enough agreement so that what is there is better than any agreement that we've seen in tool marks that have been created by different tools. And that's learned on the job, doing this, doing practicals that I did in training, looking at thousands of comparisons of things that I've test fired, that I know were fired from the same gun, looking at things that I've test fired from different guns and looking at that. It's also done through studies that I participated in training. I'm looking at things that help us know what that sufficient agreement is within all of those features and looking at the totality of those markings. So we're not going to base our opinion just on one little mark. We're going to look at the entire surface area of that bullet, the entire surface area of that cartridge case in order to make our conclusion. We're not looking at one little mark and making an identification. So we have to think of the totality of all the markings that we see under the microscope.
So the short answer to my question, there is no set number of steps on the ladder you have to reach before you can make your decision.
We use a method of pattern matching again, and that's how we do it. And that's a widely accepted method throughout all firearms examiners in the United States and the world, really. That's what we've been using for years to complete firearms identification, and that's what's been widely accepted.
Just say no. The answer was no. There's no minimum steps. Well, here's how we do it. That just no would have been fine. This guy's driving me a little bit crazy too.
Expertise has come under criticism by the scientific community?
There has been criticism, but again, there's been research completed to support firearms identification, if you will.
Well, I mean, the National Academy of Scientists issued a report and was pretty critical of the objectivity of your work, that it is more subjective because you don't have a set number of rings on a ladder you got to reach. It's based upon your experience, your training, and your opinion. But there's no objective criteria by which to measure whether something matches or not. Isn't that, you're aware of that criticism by the National Academy of Scientists, right?
I'm aware of some of the criticism, yes, sir. However, the process of making the identification is subjective in nature, but it's based on some objective data that we're looking at. There's, again, lots of information that we're looking at, the contours of those tool marks, the individual peaks and ridges of those tool marks, and looking at it, it's not just looking to see,
Thank you, Phil, for that email.
is this a match and it looks good. We're really looking under high magnification at all of these features to see what agreement or disagreement that we can determine. And again, that's based on some objectivity, of how we arrived to that situation.
That's cute. I like that.
But you agree that your chosen field is part art as much as science, right?
Our field is an applied science, really. We do use lighting and angles to look at these features under the microscope, and it's important to know how to move those items around and move those lighting and those different stages on our microscope in order to see some of these markings. It can be difficult to do. And
have you thought about just answering the question that was asked? Have you thought about that idea? Have you thought, I could just answer the question that was asked and just do that? And as a lawyer, I would have lost my shit long ago. I'd be like, stop. Let's try this again. Stop. Let's try this again. All right. Just answer the question I asked, please. Can we try that, please?
In order to make some of those striations show up. Again, these are tiny little marks that we're looking at, under magnification. But the field itself is not art. It's an applied science. We're using scientific processes to reach these conclusions. With years of research to support it.
You first examined item 22 back in June of 2021, correct?
Maybe we can try to get James from court
yes.
on today. That would be good.
Which is the
if we can get James from court
shotgun
on.
that Alex Murdaugh had that was taken by Deputy Green, right?
Yes, sir. Item 22 was a Benelli Model Super Black Eagle, and I did receive that item in June. Yes, sir.
And when did you receive? I'm not going to pick it up again.
I'm going to send him a note if he'll pop on the stream.
And it's almost past 5 o'clock on a Friday. I don't want to create a bit more of a delay, but when did you receive the 300 blackout?
Is that the item 33 rifle?
Yes, sir.
Referring to?
Be interested to see how it's playing in the courtroom.
I received item 33, which was
I feel like if you took a shot every time someone objected to the question, you only get mildly buzzed.
And when did you issue your preliminary opinions on item 33 and item 22 to your agency, SLED?
I released some results to our agents and investigators on June 10th. Yes, sir.
Are you aware after June 10th that SLED dive teams have been going out in Colleton County, diving the waters, trying to find murder weapons?
I'm not aware of what all our dive teams were doing. No, sir.
Well, you certainly didn't report to the folks who were relying on your work that we found the murder weapons, did you?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
You didn't report to the folks at SLED who rely upon your analysis that, hey, Eureka, we got the murder weapons.
No, sir, that's not what I reported.
And you've never received any projectiles from the shooting range at Moselle to compare to...
Objection, Your Honor, asked and answered.
I haven't asked my question yet.
Here's the question.
Have you ever received any projectiles from the shooting range at Moselle to compare to the projectile item number 8?
Object. It's been asked and answered.
Overruled.
Possibly, but you can answer it again.
Yes, sir.
If you've answered it before.
Based on my understanding of the scene, I do not believe I received any projectiles from that shooting area.
If
But
he
that's
answered
based
the
on my
question, it was so
understanding
long
of-
ago
of where I
that, you
believe the
know,
other projectiles were recovered from.
it's fine. Overruled.
When you got item 22, the shotgun, do you know whether it had been swabbed on the inside of the barrel?
I believe it had been processed by other departments. However, I do not know what those swabs entailed.
If a shotgun has been recently fired, does it leave evidence in the barrel that soot?
Yes.
Yes, sir, it's possible that we would see some type of residue from firing in that barrel.
It's
And
possible.
are you aware that Agent Worley swabbed the top?
I'd like to
before
see
she
a shotgun that you fire that
remove
doesn't
the
leave some
16
residue
gauge shell
inside the
from it?
barrel. If you have that
No,
shotgun,
sir, I
let me
do
know.
not
That'd
know
be
what
great.
Agent Worley
That'd make
did
my
in
life a
this
lot easier.
situation.
Can you see residue with the naked eye of a shotgun that has just recently been fired?
Sometimes, yes, sir. And that is something that we also document as part of our examination of the firearm. And when I looked into the barrel and looked down the bore of the item 22 shotgun, I do have in my case file circled that I noticed some fouling or residue in the barrel.
Was it recent fouling residue, or was it just a dirty
He
gun?
doesn't know.
I can't date when that fouling was placed there. That residue was placed there. No, sir, I can't put a time on that.
What about
know
the
you
300
can't.
blackout? Was it?
He doesn't
I
know.
think you have a note there's some fouling there, but maybe I'm confusing it.
Yes, sir, that's correct. On the item 33 rifle, I did note that there was some fouling or residues in that barrel.
The opinion that you have provided this court as to the shell casings
I'll just answer
from
the
the murder
question anytime I
scene,
know the answer. That'd be
which
good.
are items, SLED items 2 through 7, and that your opinion is that they were loaded into, extracted and ejected from the same firearm at some previous time with items 35 through 37, 39, 108, 113, 116, 17, and 122, and those are shell casings that were found around the house and at the shooting range.
Objection.
Opinion that they were
I don't even know what the question is.
that they were loaded into, extracted, and ejected from the same firearm. Do you hold that opinion with 100% certainty?
Yes, sir.
Objection
That
to
is
the
my
form of the
opinion.
question. Could
That
that
is
get
the
that
conclusion
rephrased,
that I
please? Holy
Did you ever
God.
tell Agent Owen that you could not forensically state with 100% certainty?
No, sir. When I arrived at that conclusion, that was my conclusion, and it was also
Wow,
agreed
when I
upon
arrived
by
at that
the,
conclusion, that was my
reviewing
conclusion.
examiner.
That's amazing.
So if there's a note in Agent Owen's report that you couldn't reach it with 100% certainty, then someone has made a mistake?
I don't know the contents of Agent Owen's report.
Okay. That's all I have, Your Honor.
Can you redirect?
Do I know Reed College? Reed. No. In Portland, Oregon? No. I didn't think that name sounded
I'll
familiar.
stand for a moment.
this testimony has not been this testimony based on the previews I thought was going to be a lot more persuasive for the state, and this has not done what I think it was meant to do for the state. The best we got is that we had shell casings at the murder scene that were similar to ones that were at the house, but we can't date them. And I don't believe that he can make a unique match. I don't believe it. I find your testimony not credible as to that respect, sir.
State's Exhibit 400. Could you kindly review that very, very quickly and let me know if you're familiar with what it is?
Not for least the reasons that you don't know many things when the defense wants to ask you about it, so how much of an expert can you be? See, one of the things that jurors get to do is like they get to believe or disbelieve anything, including expert testimony. And so I, as a juror, can be like, I don't believe anything you just said. You're full of shit. That's what I think. Yeah, no, I agree with you, Judy. I'd stab myself in the neck with my own pen if I could take notes on the jury. Yeah, I think we just figured out why they don't give pens to the jurors. I think we just discovered the answer.
Yes, sir.
What is it?
This appears to be a copy of my report.
It's an accurate, complete copy of your report.
Yes, sir, it does appear to be.
All the things we just discussed today.
Yes, sir.
State would move to admit item State's Exhibit 400. I believe it. Okay. Mr. Drew, please, because some of the questions concerned your field. Please tell us how long has firearms identification and tool mark identification, how long has it been around?
In its current form, I would say the early 1900s is when this really became popular, and firearms identification was born with several important cases. It was as early as the 1900s that they started looking at this evidence and looking at those individual characteristics through microscopy. So ever since that time, it's just evolved and grew with further research and support, advances in technology, and but it's been around for several years.
And are you familiar with any studies that were done utilizing what would be called consecutive barrels
Yes,
of
sir.
firearms? Explain to us what a consecutive barrel study would be and what's done in those.
Sure. When we're looking at those characteristics under the microscope that were imparted onto a fired bullet or a fired bullet or a cartridge case, we're looking at all those tiny little features. A consecutively manufactured study takes into the account of the manufacturing process. So all those marks that we discussed are coming from that gun being produced by a manufacturer. Metal scraping and removing metal. So we have tools cutting and tools stamping and really working on hard metal surfaces. So when we look at a study that has consecutively manufactured things, that presents an opportunity for a worst case scenario for us as examiners. If those tools were going to leave markings on other firearms, so if you had this breech face being made by the tool and it made the next one, those are consecutively manufactured. If there's any carryover of those characteristics from one to another, that's what that study does. It highlights that and it puts that as an emphasis as part of that study. And we as examiners are looking at that, that's our worst case scenario. If we're going to see any carryover of that tool making that item or that breech face, we would expect to see marks. There's several studies that are out there, and I've participated in several of those as part of my training, where we're given samples that have been fired by consecutively manufactured barrels. So if we see any agreement between each of those barrels, we should see it there. Or studies where we have consecutively manufactured breech faces. Again, those are breech faces made by the same tool, one right after another. And if we see agreement in there, we should see it in that study. I've participated in those studies, in those.
Are you
those research
talking about
projects. Some of them
fired
have been
bullets
studies prior to
out
me
of a
becoming
barrel?
examiner, and
Are
I was
you
able
talking
to
about
clearly
casings
distinguish and accurately
ejected?
distinguish between those projectiles.
When you
So
talk
I was
about
able to determine
consecutive barrels.
those projectiles were fired by this barrel, this barrel, this barrel, and this barrel.
Oh, you're
or that
talking about
cartridge case was fired by
projectiles.
this gun with that
Oh,
breech
that's a
face,
little
this
bit
gun with that
different then,
breech face,
isn't
and
it?
this gun with that breech
Oh.
face. So we are aware of that in our community, and we do things to be proactive on that. And that's just an example. And that's something I participated in and was able to successfully pass as part of my competency in determining.
Okay,
was
as to
fired by what in those
consecutive barrels, but as to
consecutively manufactured
consecutive,
And those were, and you were able to compare firearms
Extractors?
that you know were consecutively manufactured, one after the other, right after the other.
That is correct.
And just for clarity, we're talking about, I'm referring to items 33 and 22 on your report. That would be the item 33 being the blackout rifle, and then item 22 on the camouflage Black Eagle 3.
Yes, sir.
Your results for some of those were, when you say inconclusive, what does that mean? Does that mean that they could have been fired, or that you just can't determine?
That's correct. Inconclusive is one of our conclusions that we can issue when there's not enough agreement or disagreement there in those tiny microscopic characteristics. So what inconclusive means is it's possible it could have been fired by that gun, and it's possible that it may not have been fired by that gun.
thank you, that's deep. Wow, great. Is it possible it could have been fired by the gun in my pants? Too much?
Attention to states, to your item number 165, States Exhibit 147. Remind us again what that item is.
Could I see item 165?
Make me find it.
I'm sorry.
It's fine. Would you be able to find it in your report if you have it?
No, sir. I'm not sure that I would be able to find it.
It should be here. Unfortunately. 147. There. All right, I'm handing you what's entered into evidence of States 147. That would be sled item 165.
Yes, sir.
Did you identify what it is again and where it was located when it was found, more importantly?
Yes, sir. This was a Winchester 12 gauge shot shell, and on the side of the shot shell it's stamped dry lock 3-inch 2. On the packaging for States Exhibit 147, it says from nightstand in Paul's room.
Now, I know counsel asked you a question about, your field being an applied science. Just so we understand what an applied science is, are there any other examples of fields that are applied in that general realm of applied sciences?
Yes, sir. A lot of what we do as firearms examiner is learned through our process of training and looking at
That wasn't
samples
the
and learning
question.
the job. It's kind of like, if you will, a physician.
Do you
They
understand
go
now to
school,
answer questions?
They learn a lot in their medical school, but they still do a residency program, if you will. So they're on the job, doing on-the-job training.
Comparing what he does to,
Objection overruled. May continue.
Please continue.
Yes, sir. So they learn things in school. Firearms identification is not something that you can necessarily go to a school and learn to do. You can't get a 4-year degree and become a firearms examiner the next day. There are universities across the nation that have firearms identification as part of their firearms program, and they're teaching that component. But in order to achieve your competency at this, you need on-the-job training. You need the experience. And
As
looking
opposed
at
to
these
doctors?
samples and knowing how to evaluate
who don't need
the
on-the-job
markings that
training
we're
and
looking at on
experience?
these, ammunition components.
Lastly, Agent Greer, Mr. Greer, I'm going to refer you to State's Exhibit 400. I'm going to put that on the screen. I'm going to direct your attention to item 128. Can you see that on your screen, Mr. Greer?
Yes, sir, I can.
Specifically, your findings concerning 2 through 7. You see where my pen's pointing?
Yes, sir, I do.
Which items were 2 through 7?
Those were from markers 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 respectively, and from my understanding of the crime scene, those were the ones that were located around
I would definitely recross.
Margaret Murdaugh's
I would
body.
recross for sure
Again,
because
we're on what page now?
they
Mr.
talk
Greer?
about consecutive
That's
barrels
on page
and
7.
bullets
Yes,
going
sir.
down barrels, but I want to know about consecutive
Items 2 through 7 found around Maggie's
actions,
body.
consecutive.
Items
expressive.
35 through 37 and
That's
39.
what I
Where were
want
those
to know the
located?
answer to.
Those
I
were from the
think
side
that's
entrance door,
bullshit.
which would be the door
I
believe,
think that's
coming
some
out
bullshit.
of the gunroom area.
And items 108, 113, 116 through 17, and 122. Where were those located?
Those were from various areas thought to be from the shoot field or from the field.
And tell me again what your conclusion was.
I was able to determine that based on matching characteristics in the mechanism marks that items 2 through 7, 35 through 37, 39, 108, 113, 116 through 117, and 122 had all been loaded into, extracted, and ejected from the same firearm at some previous time.
Nothing further.
Thank you. Further examination.
No, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. You may step down.
Bullshit. I don't believe this guy. I don't believe it. I don't believe it.
While
I
he's
think
preparing to
he's
step
bullshit.
down, ladies and gentlemen, we will recess for the remainder of the day and the weekend, and we'll need you back at 11:30 on Monday morning, 11:30. Please do not discuss the case.
Bullshit. Bull fucking shit. Not a chance in this fucking world. Not a fucking chance. I don't think so. That sounds like some bullshit. All right. I need to gain some energy by going on someone else's stream. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dump you over into Legal Mindset stream, and then I'm going to join his stream so that I can like be part of that conversation, because this is some absolute bullshit. I don't believe anything he's saying. I don't believe it. It sounds like some bullshit. I'm dumping you guys over there. So I will continue these thoughts over there with some other people because this sounds like some shit. All right. I will see you guys in just a second. Holla. What the fuck is this?
Which witnesses will you have?
Your Honor, if we're talking about the in-camera hearing, we'll have Mark Tinsley, and we do have another issue, which I believe I had indicated to Your Honor perhaps in a pretrial conversation as to a conversation that took place a few days after the crimes occurred, in which there were a number of individuals present. Mr. Murdaugh was present. I don't know the contents of that meeting because I've been out of an abundance of caution, have stayed away from that. And I believe that we may have a little bit of testimony just on whether or not there is any attorney-client privilege to that conversation. I've been careful throughout this investigation preparation not to be privy to that, but I do believe that it is not an attorney-client privilege conversation, but I'd like the court's ruling on that before I came privy to the contents of that. That's the only other issue at this time that I think would be addressed in camera
All
that
right. I'm
morning.
canceling the stream. I'll see you guys over there.
Your Honor, and
Love ya. Bye.